What is Juneteenth? Juneteenth is the actual holiday that celebrates the official date that all slaves found out that they were actually emancipated. So the Emancipation Proclamation was signed in 1862, and the slaves did not find out all across the country until 1865. So for those 3 years, there were a large number of slaves who were still working under the conditions that were previously happening. Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation in September, I believe, of 1862, and it becomes effective January 1st, 1863. A bunch of soldiers who were fighting in the Civil War retreated into Texas. And while they were in Texas, they continued slavery. But it was such a small rural areas that a lot of people didn't know about the Emancipation Proclamation being signed. Robert Granger brought the actual Emancipation Proclamation to Texas and took over those troops that were fighting against the others because they did know that they were supposed to be freeing the slaves, so they were protecting that. And so when Granger came into the city, he announced to the entire city that they needed to ensure that they were letting these people become free men. They defeated those Southerners who were hiding out in Texas, and the following year, the slaves celebrated their freedom. And so when they celebrated this freedom, they would also use this day as a political protest and information day for slaves to find out their political rights, how to remain free, how to acquire land so that they could avoid a lot of the vagrant laws that they had enforced. Because after slavery ended, the way that they ensured that slaves could essentially stay within slavery was if you were found outside of a plantation and didn't have a particular place to be, then they would jail you. And so by jailing people, they would now become criminals, and they couldn't get jobs, and they couldn't, buy land and things of that sort. So they would use Juneteenth as a day for all the slaves to come together in a particular location, and they would share information. Juneteenth, the actual day that Granger came into Texas and cleared out the troops, was June 19th, 1865. Juneteenth should be a national holiday, but it has not traditionally ever been celebrated in that way. Most African American communities have some type of celebration, but it's not celebrated the way it used to be. So from about 1865 to about 1908, former slaves would come together to kind of teach each other about different political things and celebrate with food and things of the sorts. However, after slaves began to what we call have upward mobility, gain a little more status in the world, the celebration kind of got pushed to the side because there were a lot of other things that came along after. In school and working and doing building businesses and things like that. And so it kind of just became something that people passively celebrated. More in the more recent years, it's more particularly after the Civil Rights Movement, a lot of people readopted this holiday within their families to commemorate now what they learned about their past. And so a lot of families do picnics. We do lots of outdoor celebrations. One of the traditions is you have red velvet cake on this day. So I don't know if y'all know where red velvet cake came from, but it did come from the Juneteenth celebration, and it's to symbolize the bloodshed of the slaves who did not make it to the slave freedom. And so I think that moving forward, I would love for the rest of the world to adopt this holiday as a day to celebrate the past of America, because it's not only a holiday that is for African Americans. Everyone who was a part of the economic world of America at the time was a part of slavery, because it was our economic way of living. And so it is something that everyone needs to acknowledge and commemorate, that we lost lives on all sides, and that it's a part of our history and something that we cannot avoid and we should not avoid, and we should acknowledge it and celebrate it and have fun with one another every year. My family, my biological family, does not have a specific celebration for Juneteenth, but myself and my friends, we gather together and we just have different foods. So of course all of my friends are of different cultures, and so we all bring a food that is very significant within the culture that we identify with, and we share that with each other, and we share stories of our past that we know about, and it's a way for us to acknowledge our past and see what types of stories don't cross, and see, how we can learn from one another's journeys. This year, for Juneteenth, my family and I are going to host a wine night for our friends, where we are going to all come together, talk about our past, but also how we can impact the future as women of color, and co-collaborate and really bring some energy behind pushing forward different types of initiatives that affect women, and particularly women of color, and really acknowledging and commemorating the women that have come before us. I think Juneteenth is super important, and a lot of communities need to understand that Juneteenth is its own separate celebration, but the message behind it is there are groups of people who don't have rights to do the things that we get to do every day. And with Juneteenth, there was a time period, or a period where people were not given their freedoms, but other people were, and they knew that these other groups were not getting their freedom, and they were continuing to live their lives. So I would love to see everyone fight for the equality of everyone's human rights across the world, because what an injustice anywhere is an injustice everywhere. So as a woman of color, a lot of the holidays in my culture are not celebrated nationally, globally, and sometimes we have to take the time from work, take the time from school to celebrate those things. And I would love to see the world begin to acknowledge these holidays in a way that doesn't make people have to take separate time or separate themselves from another group of people just to have their own celebration. So if we could incorporate a lot of these holidays, not just Juneteenth, we also have Chinese New Year. We don't get that off, we don't get the any type of holidays that celebrate LGBTQ communities off from work at all. And so I would love to see us start to incorporate other cultures into our abilities to take off for national holidays.